In this video, we're going to learn how to invoke the command line and use it for day-to-day tasks. The first way we can invoke the command line is by going to the top left-hand corner, pressing on this little blue icon, and typing in terminal. Now I'm just going to press the one that says terminal emulator, and here it spawns a window. The second way we can invoke the command line is by right-clicking and clicking open terminal here. Now, as you can see, I opened it in my desktop because I right-clicked on my desktop and I said open here. Now, if I go to my home folder and I also right-click and press open terminal here, it's going to open up in my home folder. The little tilde, the little squiggly line there represents the home folder. And the third way we can invoke the command line is by pressing Control Alt T all at the same time, and it's going to spawn a terminal window in your home folder. Pressing Control Alt T is the recommended way of opening a terminal window. In this segment, we're going to learn how to interact with files in the command line. First, we're going to use a command called cat, which is going to be abbreviated for catenate. And we're just going to specify a file, which is going to be test.cpp. And as you can see, we've listed the contents of this file to the terminal window. Now, if we want to move a file, we can use a command called mv, which stands for move. And we're going to specify a file, again, test.cpp. And let's say we want to move it to our home folder. So home/student, there you go. Now if we try and cat the file again, the file does not exist because we just moved it. Now, as I've showed you before, we can use cd to go to that directory. And since the home folder is below us, we can just use cd and then two periods. And then we can cat the file again, like normal, because it exists. Now to gain information about a file, we can use file, and then the name of the file. We're going to use test.cpp again. And as you can see, it says it's a C++ source file, and it's also an ASCII text file, which means it's just human readable code, human readable text. Now we can clear our terminal window, and we can use two ways we can create a new file. One is in the form of using touch. Now touch, and we're going to call this one csuf.txt. Now if we do file to it, we're going to see something interesting. It's going to say that's empty, and that's correct because we didn't specify any contents for it. Now we can use another command if we want to have something go into our file. We can say echo, and then we're going to echo will actually just print text to our screen. Let's just say hello world. As you can see, it printed hello world to the screen. But there's an interesting manipulation we can do, which is going to be called IO redirection, which is IO stands for input and output. Now, if we specify one of these signs here, this greater than sign, and the file we want to send this input to, csuf.input, csuf.txt, we can cat the file. We can say, it says hello world. Now, if we specify, let's say we specify another greater than sign, and then we say hello world and friends, and then we cat the file again, we see that it has added it to the file. Now, this one up here, the one greater than sign, will put the contents of the echo into the file and delete anything else into the anything else in the file. And this two greater than signs will actually append, which means it's going to be added to the last line of the file with a new line. This can be seen where if I say echo delete lines, and I only specify one greater than sign. Then I try and open the file again. And as you can see, delete lines is the only line in the file. Here we're going to use a command called zip to help create some archives on our computer. And an archive is just a way to compress files to save space on our computer. Now the command's going to be zip-r, then the archive name, let's just call it test.zip, and then after the .zip, we can specify our input files. Now we're just going to use test.cpp as our only file in this archive. Now, as you can see here, if we say file test zip, it's going to say zip archive data at least version 2 to extract. Now, what command we can use is unzip, which just will unzip our file. And we're going to want to specify our input file, which is going to be test.zip. And -d is going to specify an output directory. Now, since we already have test.cpp in here and we don't want to overwrite it, we can say that we want to output it to the temp directory. These files here are going to be deleted once every reboot, so we don't have to worry about deleting these files. And as you can see, it said inflating, and it sent it to this directory here, temp, and it saved it to that file. And to delete these files, we can say rm, and then we can specify the file name. Now let's say we don't want test.cpp anymore, and we remove it. Now you have to be very careful with rm. Once you've removed a file, there's no going back while using rm. rm will unlink it from your hard drive's ability to access it anymore, and will be overwritten by other streams of data later on while you use your computer. So if you don't want to delete files permanently, I would suggest right-clicking on files and deleting them instead. In this segment, we're going to learn how to interact with directories in the command line. Now, a directory is just a folder, and from now on I will be referring to folders as directories, as most commands will have directory in the name that manipulate directories. Now, to change our directory, if we want to move around in the file system, we can type cd, then the path to our folder directory, and we're just going to go to the desktop, and we're in our desktop now. Now, to see where we are, we can type in pwd, which just stands for print working directory. Now, if we want to list the contents of this directory, we can type in ls, and then space dot. The dot signifies the current directory. And as you can see, we have a.out and test as the contents of our folder. Now, let's say we want to list the contents vertically. We can do that by just saying ls-1, and that's just a neat little trick you could do to print them vertically if you need that. The next command we're going to use is going to be called mkdir, which stands for make directory. Now I'm going to want to clear my terminal window, and I'm going to press Control L to do that. And I'm going to invoke make directory, and I'm going to make the folder called CSUF. Now, let's say I want to make folders inside of that folder, make directories inside of that directory CSUF. What I can do is I can say make dir -p, which is going to stand for recursive. It would be recursive. The p doesn't line up with an r to signify recursive, but our -p is going to be recursive. And let's say CSUF, and then we're going to say, now I want to make a couple of folders. I don't want to just make one folder. And instead of repeating make directory dash P every time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these squiggly braces here. And these are called expansion braces, and they'll basically create CSUF and then any folders, directories that I specify. So let's say I want to say A, then comma B, and then comma C. Now it's important that there are no spaces between the commas. So we're going to press enter, and let's just list CSUF, and why not just in right here. As you can see, it says A, B, and C. These are subdirectories inside of the directory CSUF. Now, if we want to remove a directory, there are two options. We can either use rmdir and specify the directory we want to delete, but this one is not going to work for us because CSUF is not an empty directory. Now I would open up rmdir and I would say I want to have the help message so I can be able to copy this ignore fail flag here. It says ignore fail on empty. And we want to Control Shift C if you want to copy in the command line, and then rmdir, and then we're going to want to say Control Shift V to paste, and then we want to say CSUF, and it's going to be okay. But another more simplified way to do that is I'm just going to recreate the files here. I'm going to use a command called rm, which is the sister command to rmdir. And I'm going to specify -r, which is going to be recursive, and f, which is going to say force CSUF. Now, this is much more simpler than typing in ignore fail on empty as the input, as the argument, and it's going to work just the same. So I recommend using rm-rf for anything you're going to be removing on your disk.